So here's an interesting point. So Andy Minor and his friend Sean Flynn were so excited about our speaker today that they wanted to have Steve come talk to us. But then Steve will have to tell you what Andy Minor and Sean Flynn are doing today because they're not here. Steve Shenbaum has been around here for many years. A lot of us know him. He is the founder and president of Game On Nation. I've seen him and his company at some events that the courts have had, the judiciary's had. He's been here before, or someone's been here before, at a meeting before. You'll recognize him from some movies and from TV. He was in American Pie 2, he was in Space Jam, and he's been on Will and Grace, Dharma and Greg, Winning London. So you may recognize him from those shows that he's been in. I think you're going to really enjoy this. I think he's going to get you excited and motivated. There's no telling what you'll be able to do after Steve talks to you. So without any further ado, come on up, Steve.
Thank you, Judge. It's really good to see everyone here. I'm going to be very... so Sean and Andy, I love them. I can also talk about them because they're not here. So they got me involved in this. Like, can you do this in November of last year? I'm like, sure, absolutely. I love this. And then I texted Andy on Thursday of last week, said, I'm really excited to see you next Tuesday. You know when you get a text, it's like, oh, about that. Oh, about that. I knew it. He's like, yeah, we're playing golf at the Bradenton Country Club on Tuesday, but enjoy the presentation. So anyway, with that, I'm doing something really different. I've never spoken. This is 25 years I've presented, and I teach public speaking and teach team building, and I do it not perfectly. I've never presented behind a podium until right now. Janine called me with Mac and said, should we strike the stage? I said, you know what? I want to do something different. I want to be vulnerable. This is not my rhythm at all. I'm going to share a story I've never shared before. I always teach improvisation, and I use interactivity and game dynamics to talk about how we can be honest, humble, and humorous, how we can go being creative, how we can go from acting authentic to being authentic. And this has always been a barrier for me. But I realize that sometimes my barriers are your security. And sometimes the way I want to do things, it's like my mother, bless her heart, she says, oh honey, I made you your meatloaf. I go, no Mom, you love meatloaf. I love you, you love meatloaf, but this isn't a transitive property deal, got it? So Andy and Sean said, would you be willing to talk about your journey, which I've never shared, because I find it to be a little bit arrogant and a little self-serving. So here's what I'm going to do. I'll make a deal with you. I'm going to share a little bit of my journey, but it's not my style. And then I'm going to come off this stage, and I'm going to share something that's a little bit more my style. And then we'll go back to what Game On's about, but really, what this community is about. And how Manatee County has unbelievable favor, and how we can just work together to make the world a little better. Is that a good deal? Cool. So bear with me. I'm not even a PowerPoint guy. This was my first big gig. It was Jack in the Box. By the way, I haven't practiced any of these slides. I have not seen this slide in 20 years. My team put this together. I booked this gig because I was really nervous, and I went to the audition in LA. I went to Northwestern and studied theater, moved back to LA, and in the audition, Jack comes on the screen on the audition. It's Jack, is the Jack in the Box, if anyone's familiar, and it's supposed to be, I'm supposed to drive up, I'm like, yeah, is Jack there? I'm supposed to be that guy, and then the director was playing Jack, said, this is Jack, and I decided in that moment to show some reverence, and I went, Mr. Box. And I booked the gig right there off of Mr. Box. I have no idea how it's going to impact your company, but I want you to know, don't be afraid to have improv in you, and don't be afraid to trust your intuition and your gut, because for then 8 years in LA, everyone walked up to me and said, Mr. Box, and I didn't mind it, because it paid my rent. This was my scene with Michael Jordan in Space Jam. The best part of that was Michael and I somehow were doing makeup together all week. So he was number 1 on the call sheet. I was number 47 on the call sheet, okay? That's not a joke. Oh, by the way, a couple rules of engagement, and you're already following it. And Judge, you honor it, and that is laugh with, not at. You will lose some jokes. You will gain a ton of trust. Secondly, have each other's back. Don't just say it like a poster on the wall, but live it out loud. Don't rely on a breaching wail that says courage to improve your courage. Got it? Have each other's back, laugh with, not at, and celebrate small wins. Those are our 3 rules. And you are living it out loud, and now we need to teach that to others. Nevertheless, so Michael Jordan and I were in our trailer together, so I got to spend a week with him. He was number 1, I was number 47. There were like 55 people on the cast. But you can imagine where I was in the pecking order. Cool? 47. And we worked together for a week, and I was his teammate on the scenes, and it was much longer on the set than my actual role in the movie. But then 8 years later, I was at an event with other celebrities, not me, I was with celebrities, and they saw Michael Jordan, and it was at a golf course in Vegas. It's really esteemed golf course, I forgot the name, but it's one of those private ones where they fly in like animals from other countries. Peacock does not exist in Vegas. It does now. You know, it's like, that's wealth. You know, when you have like plants that are not indigenous to the area. And Michael looked at me, he goes, I know you. And I went, you look familiar too. Anyway, I was ready for that moment. I'm telling you this story because I want to connect back to the journeys. You know, I was a character actor in LA. I started doing sitcoms and film. I worked a lot because I had a unique look and I love humor. I was not a great actor. Never tried to be a great actor. Never was in love with, like, I never went to bed like, can't wait to be an Othello, you know? I wasn't in that mindset and others were. And I looked at them and I thought, if you want it that badly, I don't know if I'll be able to compete with you. Because my why is not as strong as your why when it comes to what you want to get after. And I want to connect that back to all of us and what we're going after now and being humble enough to say, you're hungrier than me for that. What am I hungry for? And I want to tell you, I'm in my lane. I'm going to get emotional because I'm not interested in y'all liking me. I'm way past that. I'm not interested in y'all liking this presentation. That sounds wild. I'm interested in us changing the world. And if I have to be the most radical, ridiculous, like sincere, authentic, just rule breaker, I will do that within reason so we can impact the world. Cool? Don't wait for survey results. Go from a 5 to a 4. But if you're going for a 4 and you get that 4 over the 5, but you're making a difference in people's lives, I'll take the 4 over the 5 on the survey. This was my first client, Pete Sampras. Anyone know who Pete is? Pete was considered the quietest, most introverted, boring athlete in the world. I consider him one of the most noble, one of the most ethical, and one of the most significant athletes of our time. But in our world, we celebrate sparkle and showmanship more than we celebrate respect and integrity. And this man, ironically, helped start a company focused on communication. The man who was considered introverted, boring, and not dynamic enough. He is now at IMG Academy, not regularly, but his son is now training at IMG Academy as a 14-year-old. And I got to Bradenton, because this man and I, who it's like salt and pepper, not the cafe, salt and pepper right here, a very outgoing, very nervous, very talkative, very loud at the time, young man, and a quiet, reserved, disciplined young man. And together we worked really well. And I got to Bradenton because of him. He said one thing to me I'll never forget. You've had someone say something to you that you'll never forget. What he said to me was, after we worked together for a few years, he was dating a woman at the time that was a dear friend of mine, and that's how we met. And he said, Steve, after I worked with him for a while, he said, I wish this program was offered when I was younger. And then I thought, where are their younger Pete Samprases? And they are at IMG Academy. So he was able to call his boss at the time, Bob Kane, who was the president of IMG, and Bob called me and said, would you be willing to visit Bradenton? I never heard of it. I checked it out. I checked out IMG, and I could feel the Holy Spirit in me at that point, and I didn't know God at all. I was a lost, wild buck. And I just heard the most irrational sound, which was, you need to be here. And I'm like, this makes no sense. I'm an actor in Hollywood. My family's from there. I'm 3 generations Los Angeles. I'm the Jack-in-the-Box guy. I know Michael Jordan. I don't need Bradenton. I'm too cool for that. And y'all know how the story ends because I'm here. This was when we got into media training. And this was an opportunity to meet athletes at IMG, get to know them, and get them to share their message and their story beyond their identity as an athlete. And that's what charges me up. So now I'm going to shift gears. I'll get to like what Game On does a little bit, but I'm more interested in just showing you different ways in which we can impact. Some of you might be podium people, some of you might be mic people, some of you might be lavalier people, some of you might be, I want to help the person with the lavalier and I don't want to be up here, and all of us need to link arms to change the world. And it's not about one sparkle pastor, one sparkle teacher, one sparkle rabbi, because now we're putting someone on a stage, and that is the danger of idolatry. I want to share with you something. And Kevin, I've never met you, but I'd like to invite you up here and share the stage with me. And if you trust me, and then we follow, laugh, lift, not at, have each other's back, and celebrate small wins, I promise you the experience will be worth it for us and be worth it for them. You cool with that? What we do, if we can just practice. I don't know you, but when you came up as a new member, I thought there's something beautiful about new. I just fascinated by new. Freshman, college, freshman, high school, new employee, new member of the military, new member of the circuit court. Like, I'm just fascinated by new because we've always all been new, but as we get older, new becomes less, yeah? But we got to remember new. Kevin, you're going to follow 3 rules. I'm going to interview you in a moment. Y'all are going to come up with a topic. Laugh with, not at. I'm going fast because we don't have time to dive into be respectful. Just be respectful. I don't want to do a lecture on be kind. Be kind. So I want you to laugh with, not at. Give us a topic that's fun, that Kevin and I can have fun with, that's not inappropriate, that's not dirty, that's not shameful. Laugh with, not at. Have each other's back. Celebrate small wins. If you were up here, what would be the topic? It could be roller coaster making. It could be cotton candy distribution. Give us something right now that we can look. What is it? Scuba diving is fantastic. Oh, thank you. Oh, so good. And so, Kevin, there's 3 rules to this. Everything you say is correct, and I will agree with you. If you say, Steve, I was a scuba diving champion in high school, then you were. Got it? That's it. The second rule is everything I say is correct. If I say, Kevin, I understand that you're a professor of scuba diving at a state college of Florida. You don't think we're in this together? Then you got to agree, got it? Third rule, let's take care of each other, but stop using that as a phrase and live it. Like, take care of each other means respect people's space if they've got a mask on and they need distance. Respect people's languages. There's 2 languages flowing through. Respect people's longevity and how long they've been here in their tenure. You got it? Respect age. So don't get a joke at someone else's expense. Trust me. That's it, man. I'm going to have you walk into it. So come in from over there. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Judge, for that introduction. We have a dear friend of ours. He's a triple doctor in scuba diving knowledge. I see a PhD, MD. He just got his dental hygienic degree in underwaterology. And you guys, I don't know if you know, but for 2022, the Kiwanis is really going to focus on under the water. Okay, please put your hands together. A dear friend of mine, Dr. Spencer. 1, 2, 3, come on. Feel that, let it go. Good to see you guys. Thanks, Doctor, for being here. Well, first, Doctor, kidding me, huge fan, by the way. I'm so glad we got you for January. So let's talk a little bit about, let's back up a little bit. You come from a line of scuba divers. Yeah. Talk about how old you were when you first realized that you loved being under the water. Yeah.
Well, as I told you before, I'm from Vietnam.
Yep.
My people are used to swimming.
Yes.
So, I had to know that scuba diving.
You had to learn that early.
Yes, so I got experience on that.
Yes, so talk about, you learned that, it comes from your people, and then you don't like to brag, but you are one of the oldest, youngest scuba divers to hold your breath the longest. Talk about that a little bit. Talk about that.
Yeah, because you have to have the endurance to stay under
Yes,
there.
yes.
So you can hide.
Yes.
And with my small body.
Yes.
Aerodynamics.
Let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about that a little bit. I want to jump on that a little bit. Kevin's got a book called The Aerodynamics of Scuba Diving. PhD. And it's under your chair. Talk about the aerodynamics of scuba diving. Like a lot of people, you guys, I'm not trying to judge, a lot of you are scuba diving in a linear fashion. Talk about the aerodynamics of scuba diving. Yeah.
So back in the 70s,
yes.
the show, the Aquaman, the dolphin.
Of course, who doesn't know the Aquaman?
So he said that you swim with your body and not with your arms.
Wait, stop right there. That's heavy. That's heavy. I said we wouldn't cry. Oh, no, again, because that's deep. Swim.
Swim with the line. Swim with the line.
Come on, come on. Celebrate this now. I want to see you. Devin said, am I the sparkle or am I the quiet? I'm the sparkle. Because we need to share the stage, man. I don't know you, but I see you. You got it? I do a little better. I'll tell you one thing, man. Your heart jumps off the page, man. Your empathy jumps off the page. Your sound is so unique. I bless the family that brought you here. And we're blessed that you're here. Yeah. You have a light that's hard to teach. You have a light that shines. It's beyond your smile. People will say that I'm a smile. That's a given. If you can really get real with one another, you can start to know each other and build relationships with each other, but you can actually get beyond the culture and you can actually understand what drives people. So let me tell you, I love when you start to physicalize. I knew because you told me you ran over bridges, you told all of us, but did you see when Kevin started to move? That you all started to move. What's your sound? Are you a podium? Are you a handheld? Are you a lav? Are you a behind the ear? Are you someone who doesn't ever want to be there, but you will help the person make sure their behind the ear is plugged in? Cool. I love your movement. Keep it up. Health is huge for you. It's not just physical, mental. That mental endorphin, that mental serotonin release is crucial for you. You got it? So keep it up. Keep looking for those bridges. Man, it's not inspiration. It's truth. Say what you saw and say it with grace. You don't need a motivational speech, folks. You don't need to be inspired per se. I'm not trying to get all controversial here. I don't think we need to be motivated. I think we need to be moved. And then I think we need to learn how to tangibly apply simple concepts daily to change the world. That's how I feel. Celebrate this man. Thanks, Kevin. This is our team of facilitators. I've never done this. I've never talked about my company in the midst of a presentation. This is our team. We have 7 people here in Bradenton. We have 8 people around the country. Most of them are represented. They come from different areas: military, Broadway, professional sports, psychology, teaching, ministry, and the combination, the core denominator that they all have is they all have a great ability to teach. They all have a teacher's gift. That's what I found. I thought my team would be necessary to have an acting gift. I actually found very quickly that it was not a room full of actors necessary to lift the curriculum up. It was actually a room full of people that had a gift for teaching. These are some of the clients that we've worked with. I will point out, I know there's someone with the Marauders here. The Pittsburgh Pirates and that organization were some of the most significant. IMG Academy and the Pirates were so significant in my transition. In 2003, that IMG brought me in. We were there for 10 years. Met my wife there. My life got changed there. We left in 2013, and the Pirates were our client from 2009 to 2021. And that is significant. 2 companies that I believe do and continue to have significance to continue to try to make an impact on this community. We have 4 areas that we teach: teamwork and connection, public speaking, presentation, inclusive leadership, and empowered well-being. And that's my family. And now I'll share with you something, because my team put this slide up this morning. I said, you put that Christmas picture up, didn't you? They said, yeah. They wanted me to do this presentation without going through any of the slides prior, by the way. And I looked at them 20 minutes ago. I'm not trying to say that I'm mailing this in. I wanted this to be real and authentic and raw. Not to trick you out, but to practice what I teach. So I want to share something about this picture. What's dangerous is that we can look at this and say, that looks perfect and everything seems to be going great. And I want you to know it's not. It's awesome and it's not great, because no one is perfect. And my child, a beautiful, lovely one that looks like her mother, which is a blessing, yeah? That same wonderful child, which you will never see in my Facebook page, 2 weeks ago, I'm going to an event right before the holidays, and I turned to that beautiful, wonderful, awesome, flawed child, and I'm like, in the morning, get in timeout. And she said, no. And I said, you get in timeout right now. And she goes, no. And I went, Jackie! And she goes, what are you talking about? I said, I'm yelling for my wife. And she goes, who are you talking to? I said, I'm talking to Jackie. I'm talking to your mother. Now I'm having a rational conversation with a 10-year-old. My blood pressure's going, all my tricks and techniques and concepts that I teach are out the window so fast. Do as I say, not as I do, folks. And she looks at me and she goes, where are you going? And I said, I'm going to teach leadership. And I slammed the door. Thank you. I want to be real, but I won't post that on my social media, because that'd be really quite difficult to then promote our company as a nice culture development leadership. Could you imagine? My kids won't stay in timeout, humbled and blessed. But we can teach your company how to stay in timeout. And what I'm trying to do here is be real here, behind a podium here, with a mic here that I've never used here, and tell you right here that comparison's the thief of joy. And with every image, there's a story deeper behind it. And that deeper behind its story is real and raw, and flawed, and defiant, and challenging, and beautiful. And all of these things can exist together. In fact, if they don't, we're not being real with each other. And I want you to know that, because I get emotional, not because I'm sad, folks. I get emotional because I can't tell you how significant Manatee County is to me. But I can tell you that this county is so significant in the country right now. And if I had to convince you of that, you're in the wrong room. This place is rad and has favor and has a port coming and has sports coming and has golf coming and has politicians coming and has leaders from all over the world showing up. Raise your hand if you run into someone in the last year and you say, what brought you here? And they're like, I don't know. But I'm living here now. Raise your hand if that's happening. Directors from Hollywood, developers from Toronto, coming here. What's bringing you here? I'm here. My grandparents used to vacation in Longboat. And I just want to encourage you to not only understand your journey and story, but understand that when you see people's journey and story, there's something behind that beautiful picture. We post beautiful pictures because we have edit features. So the last thing I'll share with you, and then I'm happy to take a few questions, all of which I never do in a normal presentation. I don't even know the last slide. That's silly. We'll keep it on that one. I want to encourage you all to continue to do what you're already doing. Judge Smith, you do this naturally. You've done it every time I've seen you. I want to phrase it. I want to give it a term. It's called coins. Coins are things about you that have nothing to do with what you do for a living. Coins are things that give you value. It's the first exercise I ever created, and it's not an improv-based exercise. It's a really simply complex concept. But I want to phrase it, I want to term it, and I want you to run with it. And I want us to be able to use these terms to attract younger people, so we can also have different age ranges in this room. And coins are your values. They're also what you value. So a coin, I want you to start thinking about it. A coin could be people that have impacted you. I mentioned Pete Sampras, he's a coin of mine. So is Miss Doty, who you've never heard of, but she's my 6th grade teacher that made us all turn the room into Phantom Toll. And I'll never forget it, because it was just rad. My place is coins. I'm from West Covina, California, but you know, I teach all over the world. But one of my biggest coins, I told you, is Manatee County. Not just Manatee County, Bradenton. Not just Bradenton, but like, you know, Riverview. Not just Riverview or BCS. Not just BCS, but where my wife went to school. Like, this place is significant to how I show up all over the world. Who are the foods that you love, the meals that you love? I'd love for you to spend 30 seconds in silence with me, and then let's hear some of your coins, things that light you up, things that get you charged up. Could be, shoot, one of my coins is In-N-Out Burger. For those people who know, they know that it started in Southern Cal. What's that? That's what Amber's all. That's the tagline. When I met Bill, Bill mentioned that his wife grew up in LA. I turned to her and said, "Where in LA?" She said, "Whittier." I said, "West Covina." We're like 18 miles away from each other. Instead of going, "Yo, I feel you," because you don't, and instead of going, "Everything good?" By the way, two things flawed there. Don't ever go, "That's just weird." Don't salute me. Don't do that. But the weirder thing is, I'm asking you, David, I don't know you, if everything's good in the midst of a second-year pandemic, why keep moving? You don't have to. You can just stop and see someone, or you can nod if you don't have the time. But if you're going to ask me how am I doing, please be ready to hear the answer. When people do that to me sometimes, I don't do this, I'm not this snarky, but they're like, "Everything good?" I want to be like, "No, I'm having problems." Fight. Oh, you don't. Oh, you don't want to. Can you imagine if you did that somewhere? Everything good? I'm like, "Nah, that's the worst day of my life." "Oh, I was just going to get coffee." So instead of everything good, why don't we start to be coin collectors? 30 seconds. I'll put you on the clock and start thinking about what lights you up. I'm not looking for your deep, dark secrets. I don't know you. I haven't earned the right to go there. I'm looking for what lights you up. In-N-Out Burger. Do you speak 3 languages? And 30 seconds. You're on the clock. And come on back. 30 seconds. And people say, "Well, I can't really afford to take a break and think about that." I'm like, "You can't afford 30 seconds? 30 seconds. I'm not asking you to go on a 2-week vacay if you can't afford it time-wise or financially, but 30 seconds? What was something that lit you up that you thought about? And the first person is going to be tough to do because it's the first, right? But Kevin already went out for you, so he's got you covered on the new. Got it? All right, gave you In-N-Out Burger. Yes?
Commencement.
Commencement. Oh, that's right, because you run. Oh, the commencement is taken out before. I love that. That's it. You don't need to go on a monologue. But now I know a little bit more. I'm like, okay. I'm not like into the hug yet. Okay. Okay. What do you got?
Great smiles.
Great smiles. Love it, Steve. What do you got?
Band Chicago.
Band Chicago. Say being in Chicago?
No, the band Chicago.
Oh, the band Chicago. Well, I still remember my parents like the album Chicago. I don't know you, Brett, but you didn't see Brett. You know Brett, but Brett was like, I'll tell you what doesn't get people to smile. Walking up and Meg, you got to smile. Really? Or even worse, I love this one. What's wrong? I love that one. What's wrong? You. No, don't do that. Don't do that. That's a laugh back. But why don't you just get people to talk about things that light them up? People like to talk about things that light them up. And then you start to see what you have in common. Band Chicago. I remember my parents' album. Chicago. I remember what he looked like that. And said the word Chicago. What do you got? Your kids. I don't need to go deeper right now, but like just to know that. I just met someone who was an 11 and 8-year-old. I got a 10 and 7-year-old. We had nothing in common until we realized we had so much in common. Great, I'm fighting for it. FaceTime, grandkids. You see what we're doing now? I love interrupting only is good when we're fighting for coins. It's great, because go. What do you got?
Traveling.
Giving back, Dave. Giving back. I love it. Coffee, I heard. Sunshine. So one of the reasons why we live here, huh? I love it here. Thank you. Every day I'm like, oh, this place. I almost don't want too many people to know about, right? Now we're at that place where it's like, yeah. I was like, come on down. Now I'm like, it's overrated. So on the other hand. Get out the end. Sunshine, coffee, giving back, David. What do you got?
Traveling.
Traveling, totally.
Driving on the racetrack.
Driving on the racetrack, very. Now I'm like, I'm not doing it now, but That's so much more interesting than going to these events, right? Not in these events, y'all know each other really, but going to the events where the other people are doing their events, now you got all the clubs there. What do you do? What do you do? What do you do? What do you do?
Sit there.
You go to the bar. And they follow you, like, there's a little bar over there. Nah, but now you don't, you get it. You got it. Tie back to a session I've never taught before. My journey was an actor in LA that liked what I did but didn't love what I did. Was good at what I did but knew I could do something better. So I had to figure out what my gifting was, and I realized my gifting was teaching, not acting. Second of all, I had to get people around me that believed in me and spoke life into me. And that person was what's considered the quietest, most introverted athlete ever, who helped start a communication company named Sampras. That brought me to Bradenton, Florida, where I had an unbelievable 10 years at IMG Academy with, just like that picture, gorgeous and flawed. Cool? Just like any big company, just like any human being, just like any meal you'll eat, gorgeous and slightly flawed. Their 10 years meant my wife changed as a human being, grew as a human being, and then stayed here in Florida because I realized that this place is significant. I was here in 2003. I don't see me leaving. Go back to LA and visit my family. And we teach teamwork and connection. We teach public speaking and presentation. We teach inclusive leadership, and we teach empowered well-being. But if you want to be real, those are all just words. We just want to go into companies and walk alongside and not just talk about what's good to know. We want to get into what's good to do. How do we apply it? How can we become healthier as human beings? And whatever phrases that they need to use to get us in the door, we use. But the real deal is we want to be a light disguised as whatever you want to call us. And my biggest thing is I want y'all to realize that, if we want to not just act authentic, but be authentic, I'd encourage us all to be coin collectors. And that way we can go out into this community, straight up. And I'm telling you, Judge, you joke, but I would like to be a part of it. I'm not saying I'm signing up today, but this seems like, why am I not a part of this group? And we need to start bringing in folks that can learn from our elders and bring a young voice to it. So we need to link arms generationally, and we need to honor young people, but they need to honor the hierarchy. And we need to work together so they can help us with their social media, and we can help them with that and all that other crap. And with that, I'll open up for 5 minutes of questions and get you out at 1:15. But I just want to thank you all for what you do in this community. Just thank you for allowing me to be here and behind the podium. So thank you very much. Yes.
And maybe an odd question, but would you ask the room with a show of hands how many people felt God during those 30 seconds of God?
This is a really interesting question. What's your name?
Stacy?
Stacy, thank you for going here. In the 30-second quiet where you're thinking about your coins, Stacy asked, and I'll phrase it pretty much what you said. How many people felt God? And I would probably add
In the room.
In the room. God in the room, the Holy Spirit in the room, or just a sense of tranquility and peace when you spent 30 seconds of silence thinking about your coins. Yeah, I appreciate the honesty too. It's not like every day is great. Stacy, that comes from, isn't that funny? As if we have to come up with a project for that. Mr. Rogers used to have what we call the 60-second pause on TV. And the television production company could not believe he would do it because that was unheard of in those days. Every minute was precious. And Mr. Rogers said, I know that. That's why I want to have 60 seconds of silence. And we live in a society that's telling our young people more than even us, rise and grind, never give up, dominate the day, win the now. And I tell you, I would speak against those terms if those phrases don't have discernment and truth underneath them. If they don't have discernment and truth underneath them, they are a recipe for Wipeout, and the winner is Monster Energy and Red Bull, because you'll get so tired that you have to get a boost. Thank you for that question. Anyone else?
You still do acting?
I don't. I haven't auditioned or acted in 18 years. I've been asked by a production company in Hollywood to do a podcast. The podcast is produced by the group that does Smartless. I don't know if anyone listens to the podcast Smartless. It's Sean Hayes from Will and Grace, Will Arnett, and Jason Bateman. The three of them have created a Smartless podcast that I love. It's the #1 podcast in the country in that region. I think Joe Rogan is the #1 podcast overall, but they have a production company. And we're going to do a podcast called Beyond the Game. And I will interview elite athletes that I've worked with in the past and talk about the power of humor, creativity, vulnerability. And I'm going to be doing improv exercises with them in the podcast and talk about everything but the sport they play, with the idea that my goal is for athletes not be identified as just what they do for a living. And we already did with Alex Smith, former NFL football player, and our next three guests are Carmelo Anthony, who was my second client, Pete Sampras, who was my first client, and Yadman. So I'll let you know once that's official, but that's the closest thing I feel comfortable going to with Hollywood right now. You're welcome. Thanks for asking, Fred. One last question.
How about training our corner store?
I love it. Point with the clothes.
It's a tradition to present you with our Kiwanis ruler to measure your future success. So we want you to come back. In fact, we want you to come back and sit over there. As soon as I sat down to eat, and Steve went over there and sat with all of them, I was by myself. I realized he's made home for himself right here. He's already home. He's already home.
I have a lot of people in this room that have had my back in good times and in challenging times. So that's something we never forget. So that is a comfortable room, especially sitting next to my clerk of circuit court agent. So that's a gem in our county. Agree?
Yes.
All right, we're going to hope that Steve comes back a lot more, and we're going to hope he takes his kids to the fair and spends some time at the Kiwanis booth. So there are pictures over here. Lemoyne reminded me there's pictures over here. Some of you, there were at the Christmas party. See if you can find your picture over there. If you want to get a costume, go in the back and start and line up and see if you can find a costume or make an appointment to do so. So with that being said, we are adjourned.